The girl who painted city skies. Every night when the city yawns and the sidewalks grow sleepy, Myra climbs a narrow staircase to her favorite rooftop. She carries a tiny wooden paint box and a magic paintbrush that hums like a little bell. Pip, her cheerful sparrow friend, flutters beside her, ready to whistle a nighttime tune. Myra looks up at the sky, where the moon listens and clouds gather like fluffy audience members. She dips her brush into sleepy blue, and the first soft color slides out and stretches across the air. When Myra paints, the paint does not smear on the roof or drip on chimneys. It floats like music and becomes part of the air, turning the sky into a soft blanket. The tall, friendly buildings watch with window eyes that blink slowly. A stray piece of color slips down to tint the old street lamp, and the lamp glows a little warmer as if thanked. People looking up from warm kitchens see new colors and smile, even if their tea is just a little too hot to sip. Stripe the rooftop cat loves painted skies. He pads softly along tiles and chases bright color swatches that fall like confetti. When Myra paints a slow, sleepy yellow, Stripe purrs so loud the chimneys seem to hum along. Pip perches on Myra's shoulder and whistles, adding tiny tunes that help the paint settle in curvy loops. Sometimes the puffy clouds tickle the tops of towers and spill a few painted raindrops that glint like little stars before they vanish. One night, Myra opens the jar labeled Moon, and the paint smells faintly of lullabies. She sweeps the brush and the moon brightens, smiling a silver smile. Windows open little by little as children press warm hands to glass to see the new colors. The magic paintbrush hums more strongly and leaves trails that look like ribbons of night and friendlier stars. Even the dogs 3 streets over wag their sleepy tails, because color seems to tell them it is almost time for dreams. The city loves Myra's paintings. A baker hangs his kettle by the window in admiration. A tram conductor whistles a gentle tune. Even the old street lamp seems to lean in. But one evening, a gray fog arrives, heavy and hushed. It slips between chimneys and wraps around antennas. It doesn't have a voice, only a soft, spreading gray that tries to hide the colors Myra has been painting. Myra feels her brush tremble as the fog cools the air and dulls the brightest hues. Myra does not want colors to vanish. She knows the city needs them to dream. She takes a deep breath and whispers to her paintbrush, "Sing with me." The brush hums like a tiny songbird, and Pip answers with a bright whistle. Myra opens the jar marked rainbow and dips the tip. This paint tastes of giggles and sunbeams in her imagination. She swirls and paints a wide, brave arc that reaches from chimney to crane and back again. The rainbow paint does something wonderful. It tickles the gray fog, and the fog cannot help but laugh. When it laughs, little gaps open and color peeks through. Myra paints another arc, and then another, until the sky looks like a ladder of colors for sleepy stars to climb. Buildings lean forward like friends watching a parade. Stripe bats at a falling smear of purple, Pip whistles a proud tune, and people on balconies clap quietly so they do not wake tiny babies. As the colors return, the moon leans down and listens to Myra's small, soft humming. Stars wink awake and the painted sky hums back. The city breathes out a happy, sleepy sigh. Myra feels tired at the edges of her paint-splattered sleeves, and she knows it's nearly time for her own bedtime. She places the magic paintbrush gently into the tiny wooden paint box, which closes with a soft click as if singing goodnight to the brush. Before Myra climbs down from the rooftop, she paints one last small thing, a tiny door of gold on a cloud, just big enough for a whisper to slip through. She hopes the whisper will find anyone who needs courage in a dream. Pip tucks his head under a wing and Stripe curls his stripe around a paint swatch. The old street lamp pours a warm puddle of light down the stairwell, lighting their steps so they go home with gentle feet and bright hearts. At the bottom of the stairs, the city seems softer, wrapped in Myra's painted sky. People fold their hands around mugs and read stories by windowlight. The moon keeps a gentle guard, and the stars hum a lullaby only the sleepy can hear. Myra tucks away her paint box and dreams of tomorrow's colors. Maybe a laugh yellow, a quiet green, or a giggle pink. Pip dreams of flying between ribbons, and Stripe dreams of chasing the brightest red dot. When the morning tucks in and the first sleepy sun tiptoes up, the painted sky keeps its secret for those who remember to look. Myra learns that painting the sky was not only about colors. It was about sharing small, brave gifts of wonder so everyone could dream a bit kinder. Each night she will climb again, brush humming, friendship at hand, to paint city skies that help the whole town sleep with a smile. And the moon will always listen, waiting for her next song. The forest full of singing birds. Leela loved listening. Every morning she pressed her ear to the window to hear the world waking up. A kettle that hummed, a cat that mewed, a far-off bell that rang. One afternoon she heard something new, a soft, looping tune drifting from the trees near her house. It sounded like someone humming and smiling all at once. Curious, she slipped on her little shoes, tucked a pebble and a ribbon into her pocket, and tiptoed toward the green whisper of the forest. The path smelled of moss and warm earth. She felt all kinds of curious in her belly. As Leela walked between tall trunks, the tune grew clearer. Peeps and trills like tiny bells, swoops of melody like ribbon in the breeze. Sunlight threaded through the leaves and dust motes danced like tiny singers. The first bird was a robin with a red chest who hopped down to greet her. He chirped a bright hello that sounded like two quick notes and a giggle. Leela smiled and answered with a soft hum. The robin bobbed and bobbed, pleased to hear her hum back. Around them, other birds rustled nearby, curious too. Deeper in, a bluebird with feathers like the sky opened her voice and poured a long, clear note that shivered like a bell. Leela thought it sounded like someone saying hello in a slow, lovely way. A yellow canary bounced in the branches and sent out quick, twinkling notes that felt like sunshine laughing. The forest seemed to arrange the music like a story. Peeps, then bells, then bright little sparks. A soft rustle revealed a friendly fox tail behind a fern. He peered out with gentle eyes and a small, swaying smile, as if the music made him want to tap a paw. At the heart of the trees stood the old oak, wider than a house and wrapped with little green vines. Its branches spread like a blanket and leaves whispered like old friends. Tucked into a low crook was a tiny golden whistle, tied with a faded ribbon that had once been bright. The robin hopped to the oak and tapped the whistle with his beak. Sometimes, the bird said, the whistle kept a whisper of every song the forest had ever sung. Leela peered and wondered, could a small whistle hold so much music? The birds spoke in trills and peeps about a hush that sometimes visited their wings. "Some mornings our songs feel sleepy," Bluebell said, and Sunny chirped that her bright notes would wobble and fall. Leela's brow furrowed. She wanted to help. The robin hopped onto Leela's shoulder as if to say, "We try to remember, but some notes hide." Mr. Fox sat nearer, ears twitching to listen. The old oak rumbled softly, telling Leela that music loved company and sometimes needed a new friend to wake it up. Leela reached out and touched the little golden whistle. It was warm from the day's sun and it tinkled with a tiny note when she moved it. "Try it," the robin encouraged. Leela lifted the whistle and blew softly. A thin silver sound slipped out and dangled in the air like a string of tiny bells. The birds circled, eyes wide like cups drinking the sound. The forest leaned in. The whistle's note was small, but it was the start of something. Leela felt a tiny flutter of bravery. She had made one bright sound. Leela tried another note, and the whistle answered with a kind echo. But as she blew more loudly to help the birds remember, the sounds tangled together. Bell with chirp, bright twinkle with deep hum, and for a moment the forest grew puzzled. A breeze picked up and leaves shivered. A tiny hush slipped between the trees. The birds halted mid-song and looked uncertain. Leela's cheeks grew warm. She hadn't meant to tangle the tunes. She put the whistle down and listened very carefully, wanting to hear how to make the music happy again. Just then, a soft cloud rolled over the sun and the forest held its breath. The robin hopped forward and peeped a tiny, steady note. Bluebell followed with a long bell-like sound, pure and wide. Sunny sprinkled little high notes like pebbles. Leela remembered how each had sounded when she first came in, the robin's quick giggle, Bluebell's slow bell, Sunny's bright twinkles. Her face lit up. "We must help each other sing our own notes," she said. Her voice was small but sure, and it sounded like a lantern turning on. This is the story's bright, joyful moment. Leela led the birds in a little game. She tapped the robin gently and copied his quick two-note chirp. Then she nodded to Bluebell and breathed a slow, bell-like note back. Sunny fluttered and Leela tried the tiny sparkling sounds. The forest answered back, echoes weaving like ribbons. Mr. Fox pawed a tiny beat on the ground and leaves danced. Each bird remembered its own song, and when they sang together, their voices braided into something new and glittering. Leela clapped with a laugh. As the music grew, the old oak seemed to hum along. Even the hollow creaked a happy squeak. Birds flew in small loops, and the sound traveled like a ribbon across the treetops. The moonlight pond in the distance flashed little silver ripples as if clapping with water. Leela felt the melody hop into her bones and skip out through her fingertips. She danced a tiny circle, and Mr. Fox joined with a gentle twirl. The whistle, left on its ribbon, chimed every time a bird passed, adding a tiny bell to the harmony. When the sun began to lower, the birds gathered on the old oak's branches like little bright notes pinned against the sky. They thanked Leela in chirps and trills, and the robin hopped onto her little shoulder in thanks. "Come again," Bluebell sang like a promise. Leela tied a tiny ribbon of her own to the whistle's string so it would remember her touch. Mr. Fox kissed her knobby knee with a soft nuzzle. Leela felt sleepy and proud at once. She had helped the forest remember how to sing. On the path home, the trees hummed behind her with new stories tucked in their leaves. Leela hummed back each tune she remembered, and for a while her melody mixed with the far-off last notes of the birds. The pebble in her pocket felt like a tiny drum. She promised to visit again and to bring new songs she found in puddles and on the playground. That night, at her window, the forest's music lulled her. In her dreams, the birds gave her a crown woven of leaves and song, and she wore it while the whole sky sang softly. The next morning, the sun painted her room gold, and a small bright chirp drifted to her window. Leela smiled in her sleep and stretched like a happy cat. Outside, the forest had kept its songs safe. Now they were threads between trees and people who paused to listen. Leela tucked her ribbon into a little book of sounds she kept under her pillow. When she grew up, she would remember how a small child with a pebble and a ribbon helped a whole forest sing again. For now, she dreamed of tunes, and the woods hummed a sleepy, gentle lullaby. The Mermaid Under the Coral Reef. Beneath the wavy blue sea, under a curly coral roof, lived Myra the little mermaid. Her tail flashed coral pink when she twirled. She loved to hum soft songs and collect tiny sea treasures. Every morning, she greeted the reef like a friend. Fish peeked from bright coral windows. Seaweed waved hello like a green curtain. Myra pressed her palm to a tidy rock and smiled. Today, the reef felt extra quiet. She wondered whether a new adventure was swimming nearby. Her hairband shell tapped twice, like a tiny asking knock. Myra set off, curious and careful. Nearby, Finn the striped fish bubbled excitedly. He loved to race Myra around coral towers and hide in tiny caves. Finn zipped through arches and puffed playful bubbles that tickled Myra's nose. They played peekaboo with anemone curtains and counted tiny shells on the sand. On a shelf of purple coral, something small winked like a new star. It was a pale shell with a soft golden heart. The glow shell hummed a tiny tune. Myra reached out gently. Finn circled in delight. The quiet reef felt like it had a secret to tell them both. When Myra lifted the little shell, the water filled with a warm, whispery sound. The glow shell glowed like a pocket of sunset. It whispered, not in words that stung, but in gentle sea songs. The reef needs a tiny helping hand. Myra's fingers tingled with a warm friend feeling. Finn bobbed and listened. The shell's light pointed like a finger toward a quiet lane between two coral towers. Myra could feel the reef breathing softly. Something small and sad was waiting. She knew the kind of help that made things shine again. A small, kind, brave try. Myra decided to follow the shell's light. She called to friends, Starry the sea star who hugs coral with steady arms, and Octo the octopus who paints tiny coral sprouts every morning. They gathered beneath a waving fern of seaweed. Starry clapped with 5 bright arms, and Octo waved a paintbrush arm happily. The reef felt like a neighborhood where everyone came out to help. They packed tiny tools, a ribbon, some kelp ties, and a brave song. Finn led with bubbly wiggles. The glow shell glowed brighter, like a little lamp through the reef's leafy streets. The road under the reef wiggled like a friendly maze. Seaweed tickled their fins and made them giggle. Bright fish peeked from holes and offered directions with flutters. They followed tiny footprints of sand and shells that glowed faintly where the glow shell shone. Along the path, they met a shy seahorse who had lost his song. He breathed quiet and tiny. Myra leaned close and hummed a lullaby. Starry held his tail steady. The seahorse blinked, and for a second, He remembered a bright tune about coral birthdays. He brightened and decided to come along. They came to a shadowed nook where colors felt quieter. The glow shell made a soft path of light on the sand. Octo reached out with many arms to help part a curtain of soft feather coral. Tiny shy fish huddled inside, and Myra sang a soft tune. The tunnel smelled like rain after a very small wave. Somewhere deeper, there was a hush, like someone holding their breath. The friends held hands, fins, and arms linked, and moved slowly so the reef would not fright. Together, they were brave in the kindest ways. At the heart of the quiet, they found a tiny coral sprout wrapped in a gray net. The net was small, but it hugged the sprout and made its colors sleep. The reef's breath slowed. Myra's heart fluttered. This felt like the reason the glow shell had shone. Fins zipped around, trying to find an edge. Octo used a clever arm to hold a ribbon while Starry steadied the sprout. Together, they worked slowly and gently. The net did not want to be mean. It was old and tired. With careful tugs and kind words, they loosened a loop. Then, with a soft, joyful pull and a tiny cheer, the net slipped free. The coral sprout stretched like it woke from a long nap. Colors poured back, pink, gold, and tender green, like paint spilled in the nicest way. The reef breathed deep and sang tiny sparkles of sound. The seahorse sang a bright note that rolled like a pearl. Myra clapped with her hand and tail. Finn made a bubble crown. Octo painted a stripe of bright blue on a shell. Starry gave the sprout a 5-arm hug. The water felt full of thank you lights. The glow shell hummed a happy song and floated back to its small bed in a purple coral nook. Myra thought it wanted to rest where it would be safe and warm. They tucked it in gently, and the little shell gave a last golden wink. The reef glowed like a patchwork blanket. Old fish came out and told small thank you stories. Even the seaweed waved slower now, as if yawning. Myra learned that tiny hands and brave little friends could fix big-sounding problems. Finn bumped her tail in a silly hug. The reef felt like a house everyone loved. That night, the waves hummed a soft bedtime song. Stars above the sea peeked through the water like shy silver buttons. Myra curled on a sleepy sandbank with Finn curled near her fin. Octo painted a sleepy picture for the reef, and Starry rested on a warm coral branch. The reef told quiet jokes in bubble whispers and promised to keep each other safe. The glow shell glowed faintly, like a night lamp. Myra closed her eyes and thought of how small kindnesses glow for a long time. She dreamed of tomorrow's little adventures and the friends she would meet again. The day the toys came alive. Night folded like a soft blanket over Leela's room. The moon outside touched the curtains with silver fingers, and a small lamp hummed sleep songs. Leela curled up, hugged Teddy the bear close, and sighed a slow, content sigh. On the shelf, Rocket Car rested on its ramp, the wooden train waited on invisible tracks, and the music box sat ready with its tiny tune wound up. The room was quiet and sweet. Then, just as a star blinked twice, the toys stirred and opened bright little eyes. Teddy stretched button arms and whispered, "SHH, tonight we tiptoe." Rocket Car revved, tiny sound like a giggle. Patch Cat Plush blinked both button eyes and twitched its embroidered tail as though it were ready to pounce on a moonbeam. Puzzle blocks wobbled together to make a tiny stage. The music box opened one careful note that floated like a feather. Everyone smiled a little because they had a gentle plan to play a secret, small show for their friend Leela while she slept on and dreamed. They began with a parade. Rocket Car zipped a soft loop, leaving a line of little laughter sounds. The wooden train chugged along an imagined track, choo-chooing in tiny, polite bursts. Puzzle blocks tumbled into letter towers, and each block clapped its painted face when it landed. Cupcake Robot winked its spun sprinkle eyes and marched with a bouncy hop. The room hummed with careful joy. Even the moon lamp smiled, casting a round golden puddle on the floor where the toys danced and spun. Halfway through their little show, a soft problem popped up. The rainbow kite toy, resting by the bedpost, had a bent stick and a droopy tail. "Oh dear," said Patch Cat Plush, tiptoeing over, "we cannot have a sad kite on stage." Teddy nodded and said, "We mend it together." Rocket Car offered a sticker for the tail, Wooden Train nudged a puzzle block to use as a splint, and Cupcake Robot whirred to fetch a tiny ribbon. They worked with slow, careful paws and patient clanks until the kite stood proud again. With the kite mended, the music grew. The music box played a soft tune that smelled like honey and warm mittens. The tune told a story of star puddles and friendly clouds. Teddy hummed a hum solo, Patch Cat Plush twirled, and Rocket Car gently pushed the kite into a pretend breeze. The wooden train kept time with a careful clack-clack beat. The toys listened to one another and learned little rhythms, like how to slow the parade so it would not wake Lila's slow, moon-breathing sleep. A small adventure followed outside the bed's edge. A shadowed carpet hill became a mountain to climb. Teddy led the way, using a patchwork blanket as a rope. Rocket Car rolled like a brave explorer, the wooden train chugged each step, and the puzzle blocks built tiny footholds. They sang soft songs about brave crumbs and kind clouds while their tiny feet and wheels carried them up. At the top, they found a secret. A shiny coin tucked under the rug's fringe, a tiny treasure left by a moonbeam long ago. The treasure coin made everyone giggle. Cupcake Robot did a tiny victory spin, scattering sugar sparkle noises. Teddy held the coin to the moon lamp light and it shimmered like a tiny sun. "It can be our star," whispered Patch Cat Plush, tucking it gently inside a block tower. They sang a whisper song and marched back down, careful not to wake sleeping toes. Their footsteps were small, but their hearts felt grand. The room held them like a secret friend, and everything felt soft and safe. Later, the toys decided to put on a tiny play. Puzzle blocks became trees, the music box grew a ribbon dress, and Teddy took the role of a gentle giant who could only speak in kind hugs. Rocket Car zipped lines like speedy wind, while Wooden Train puffed wise old choo-choos. Patch Cat Plush performed a silly tumble that made everyone clap. They practiced soft bows and polite whispers so their applause would be felt more than loudly heard. It was a show for moonbeams and for their favorite friend asleep in the bed. The tiny play was a gentle success. Toys bowed and the moon lamp blinked like a lantern clapping. Leela did not wake, but somewhere in her dreams she laughed softly and turned. The toys whispered that this was the most important applause because a smile in a dream is very real. They all agreed to tuck their props away. Rocket Car rolled the music box ribbon back. Puzzle blocks stacked into a neat tower, and Teddy wrapped the little coin in a soft blanket leaf, hiding it safely in the block tower treasure chest. Suddenly, from the hallway came a tiny sound like a sniffle. The toys froze. A lost sock monster, a rumpled stray sock, had wandered into the room and was shivering under the chair. "Oh," said Patch Cat Plush, padding over with soft feet. Teddy offered his own little scarf. A ribbon and cupcake robot hummed a warm tune. The sock monster sniffed, and when the music wrapped it like a blanket, it stopped worrying. The toys learned that kindness could mend more than broken kites. It could warm a tiny lost thing's heart, too. After they helped, the toys felt sleepy in a good way. The music box played the slowest song it had, like a lullaby made of feathers. One by one, Rocket Car parked itself in a cozy groove, Wooden Train backed into its usual spot, and Cupcake Robot wound down to a soft tick. Patch Cat Plush tucked into a block cave, and Teddy sat by Leela's pillow to keep watch. They whispered the secret rules of sleeping toys: be gentle, be quiet, and return every lost thing to a safer place. But before the final hush, Rocket Car made a tiny idea. "Let's leave Leela a morning surprise," he whispered. The toys all brightened, plotting something small and sweet. Puzzle blocks spelled the word smile, and the music box promised a soft twinkle when opened. They arranged the rainbow kite across the foot of the bed like a bright bookmark, and Teddy tucked the coin where Leela might find it in a careful, secret way. Working together felt like a warm puzzle that fit just right. The first hush of dawn crept in like a shy kitten. The toys hurried to finish. Rocket Car hurried a soft little scoot back on the shelf, Wooden Train clicked into its painted groove, and puzzle blocks shuffled into a neat stack that read smile from the bed's cozy place. Music box wound the tiniest bit more so it would sing a very small hello when opened. Teddy gave a last tender pat on Leela's hair and whispered, "Sleep well, little dreamer. We'll be here." As morning yawned and light spilled across the room, the toys settled perfectly still. They became soft and still like waiting stones, button eyes gentle and faces calm. Leela stirred, rubbed her sleepy eyes, and blinked at the room. Her gaze landed on the puzzle blocks that whispered smile, and her mouth curved like a sunrise. She reached for Teddy and found, tucked inside the block tower, a tiny shiny coin that winked in the morning light. Leela gasped the smallest, happiest gasp. Leela laughed a bright little laugh and hugged Teddy close. She did not know how the coin got there, how the kite was mended, or why the music box sounded a softer tune, but she felt loved. She whispered a thank you to her toys and gave them the biggest sleepy squeeze. The toys, though still, felt the thank you like a tiny, warm drumbeat. They held it inside like a secret star, knowing they had shared magic and care, and that the room would be ready for another nighttime adventure. All day long, when the sun was bright and playtime noisy, the toys waited patiently for the sun to tuck itself away. They remembered their little night parade and the cozy rescue of the lost sock. When the house sang soft again and Leela's eyes began to droop, the toys looked at one another and winked a tiny wink of promise. Tonight, they thought, we will play gentler, love kinder, and dream even sweeter. For every child who sleeps, toys will keep a careful, starry watch. And so the room learned a secret. When a child loves a toy, that toy carries a little bravery, a little music, and a lot of care. The day the toys came alive was not one day only, but a promise tucked into ribbons and blocks. Each evening, they would wake, tiptoe, and keep the small, kind things that make a room gentle. And Leela, with a morning coin and a heart full of tiny wonder, always smiled a little wider the next day. The magical door at midnight. Mia woke to a tiny knock, tap, tap, just when the clock whispered 12. She sat up in her cozy bed and blinked at the floor. There, tucked under the quilt and near her slippers, was a little wooden door no taller than her favorite storybook. It shimmered with a soft golden light and hummed like a lullaby. Mia smiled with the slow excitement of someone who knows a secret might be kind. She slipped on her fuzzy socks and whispered, "Hello." When the little door opened, a small head peeked out, Toby the turtle, eyes bright like green marbles, and a tiny lantern mouse with a glowing lamp. They bowed as if greeting a long-lost friend. "Would you like to visit the midnight market?" Toby asked in a voice that sounded like slow giggles. Mia's heart felt like a fluffy balloon. She nodded, tugging the quilt around her shoulders like a cape. The doorway smelled faintly of honey and the sea. Stepping through, Mia found a path of twinkling stones leading into a gentle night garden. Above, the crescent moon tilted like a friendly smile and sprinkled moonbeams that felt like soft ribbons. A star carpet waited, pillows of dandelion fluff tucked at its corners. Mia climbed aboard with one careful hop. Toby crawled beside her, tiny feet tapping. The lantern mouse lit the way. The path hummed under them, and Mia felt safe and brave in a new quiet world. They drifted toward the midnight market, where tents glowed like jellyfish and stalls sold music in jars. Friendly creatures strolled with pockets full of giggles. A baker sold warm cinnamon clouds, a painter sold pictures that hummed, and a seamstress stitched tiny dreams into mitten-sized pockets. Mia smelled sugar and willow smoke. Children of the night owl babies with sleepy eyes clapped and waved as the star carpet floated over the smiling crowd. Everything sparkled kindly. At the moonlight stall, Mia met the crescent moon's own helper, who offered small moonbeams bundled like ribbons. "Take one to share a smile," the helper whispered. Mia unwrapped a silver ribbon and felt it giggle in her hand. She looped a moonbeam into her hair and it warmed her like a soft blanket. The lantern mouse's whiskers twitched. Toby's shell glowed brighter. Mia promised to use the moonbeam to help anyone who looked a little dim. Soon they sailed on a fluffy dandelion float through a stream of giggling clouds. Puffy cloud kites waved hello as they passed. Fireflies played hide-and-seek among the petals of the sky, and each tiny light left a soft print as if someone had stamped glow on the air. Mia and Toby reached out to touch the prints, and each touch made a gentle bell sound. They laughed until their chests felt like soft springs of joy. In a shadowed nook by a willow stall, they found a little grumpy shadow who had lost its smile. It shuffled and sighed like a lost hat. The shadow was soft and small, but hollow where cheer should be. Other visitors passed carefully, not knowing how to help. Mia knelt and touched the shadow's hand. She unwrapped her moonbeam ribbon and tied it into a tiny bow. The moonbeams tickled, and the shadow tried a smile. It trembled, then bubbled into a bright grin. The newly smiling shadow joined a small parade led by sleepy owls tapping leaf drums. Toby marched with a tiny leaf drum too, his shell gleaming like polished green glass. Mia clapped in time and stomped one soft slipper. Beat, beat, hush, and the crowd hummed along. The parade tucked the happy shadow into a pocket of laughter, and the market swelled with giggles like warm soup. Mia felt proud and sleepy in a comfortable, helpful way. The moon whispered that dawn would be near and that star carpets prefer to rest before morning birds wake. Mia's heart gave a little skip. She didn't want the night to end, but she knew home waited too. The moon handed Mia a small bell that sounded like a giggle and a paper map woven from stardust. "For kind footsteps and brave pockets," the moon said with a wink. Mia tucked the gifts safely into her pajamas pocket. On the way back, the market hummed a slow lullaby. People yawned and tents lowered like sleepy heads. The star carpet drifted through the twinkling stone path toward the tiny door beneath Mia's bed. The lantern mouse curled into a nap on Mia's shoulder, and Toby yawned a turtle-sized yawn that sounded like a tiny tide. Mia pressed the little bell once. It chimed with a soft giggle that seemed to tuck the world into a blanket. Back in her bedroom, the tiny door closed with a kissing click and left a sprinkle of moon dust on Mia's pillow. She climbed under the quilt, the star map warm in her pocket and the giggling bell tucked by her hand. Toby curled up like a small green pebble on the quilt edge, and the lantern mouse found a corner of the sock drawer to keep watch. Outside the window, the sky blushed faintly as dawn yawned, but the room stayed cozy and bright with moon crumbs. Mia hugged her new map and bell and whispered thank you to the small night friends. She promised to return when the door sang again. The lantern mouse squeaked a tiny good night, and Toby blinked slow, turtle-sure. Mia closed her eyes and felt the moonbeam ribbon like a warm hug. In dreams, she floated back to the market where she helped others and laughed with clouds. The house kept its secret, and the little door waited, patient as sleep. Outside, the crescent moon dipped behind cottony clouds and the sky grew paler, but the tiny door at the foot of Mia's bed kept a faint twinkle like a secret smile. As Mia's breathing softened into sleep, a tiny knock, tap, tap, no louder than a kitten's paw, sounded once more and then faded. The night had been full of new friends, small brave moments, and shiny little gifts of kindness. Mia slept, dreaming of moonbeams, sure that adventures would come back again.